All right, let's dive into something a little different today, shall we? We're about to explore a career path I bet you haven't thought much about. Vessel engine inspection.
And we're not talking about your neighbor's little fishing boat here.
Mm.
Think big. Massive cargo ships, ferries with some serious horsepower, even the occasional luxury yacht.
Okay, now you've got my attention. I'll be honest, I was picturing, well, greasy wrenches and maybe a rusty toolbox when I first heard vessel engine inspector. This sounds way more interesting.
Oh, it definitely is. These are the people who keep those complex systems running, and we're talking everything from the diesel engines you might expect to, get this, nuclear reactors on some vessels.
Wait, did you say nuclear reactors? You're not kidding, are you?
Not at all. It's a surprisingly diverse field, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. Think about it.
Uh,
Every ship out there, no matter how big or small, relies on its engines. These inspectors are like, engine detectives making sure everything's up to code and running smoothly.
I'm starting to see why you'd need someone with a keen eye and a knack for problem solving. So what's a typical day look like for a vessel engine inspector?
Well, that's the interesting part. There isn't really a typical day, is there? You could be doing a routine check on a fishing vessel one day, then the next you're on a giant cargo ship investigating a potential engine failure.
So you're constantly adapting to new situations and challenges.
Exactly. And that variety is what makes it so engaging. One day you might be examining a brand new propulsion system, fresh out of the shipyard, and the next you're dealing with a vintage engine that's probably circumnavigated the globe a time or two.
You've definitely piqued my interest. Can you break down what an inspection actually involves?
Sure. There are different types of inspections, each with its own specific procedures and requirements. You've got your routine checkups like making sure all the fluids are topped off, checking for any leaks, and inspecting belts and hoses, the essentials. It's all about preventative maintenance finding and fixing those minor issues before they turn into major headaches.
So a bit like taking your car in for an oil change, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. Then you've got inspections that happen after an engine's had major repairs or a complete overhaul. Those are called post-casualty inspections.
Post-casualty. That sounds a bit intense.
It can be, yeah. Yeah. A casualty in this context could be anything from a minor malfunction to a complete engine failure or even a collision that affects the engine room. It's the inspector's job to figure out what went wrong, why it happened, and how to prevent it from happening again.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility.
It definitely is. They're analyzing the scene, examining the damaged parts, and essentially piecing together the whole chain of events, like detectives. Remember that engine detective idea?
So it's not just about knowing the mechanics of an engine, but also understanding the physics and the forces involved in those critical situations.
You got it. And on top of all of that, they're responsible for meticulously documenting their findings. They create reports that might be used for insurance purposes, safety investigations, or even just to inform future maintenance work.
It sounds like a vessel engine inspector needs a pretty unique combination of skills. You've got the technical expertise, the problem solving, and then that whole Sherlock Holmes deduction thing you mentioned.
It's a very specific skill set, that's for sure. And you know what's really shaking things up in the field? Technology. Remember those advanced sensors we talked about earlier? They're not just a futuristic fantasy anymore.
Oh, you mean they're actually being used now?
Absolutely. More and more vessel engines are being fitted with them, and they're capable of providing a constant stream of data on just about everything.
Hmm.
Temperature, pressure, fuel efficiency, even emissions. It's pretty remarkable.
So it's not just about eyeballing things and hoping for the best anymore.
Not at all. Vessel engine inspectors are using really sophisticated software now to analyze all that data. I mean, we're
Hmm.
talking about identifying potential problems before they even become visible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
And the reports they can generate. With that level of accuracy, that was unheard of just a few years ago.
Wow. It's like having X-ray vision for engines, isn't it? That has to be a complete game changer, especially for preventative maintenance.
You said it. And for anyone who's really into the why behind how things work, this kind of technology just adds a whole new layer to the job. You're not just fixing what's broken. You're using data to optimize performance and maybe even prevent major incidents from happening in the first place.
Okay, you've definitely sold me on the cool factor. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the reality of this career path. What are the pros and cons that someone who's interested should really consider?
That's a great question. Let's start with the good stuff. One of the biggest draws for a lot of people is the earning potential. Because it's such a specialized field and the work is so important, vessel engine inspectors are typically very well compensated.
Well, that's always good to hear, especially for a job that demands such a high level of expertise.
Right. And then there's the travel. Depending on where you're based and what kind of vessels you're certified to inspect, you can find yourself working in ports all over the world.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Can you imagine inspecting the engine room of a luxury yacht in the Mediterranean one week? Then maybe a research vessel in the Arctic Circle the next.
It's definitely not your typical 9 to 5 office gig. And speaking of job security, that's another major plus. As technology continues to evolve and maritime regulations change, the need for qualified inspectors is only going to keep growing.
That kind of peace of mind is definitely something people are looking for in a career these days. But what about the flip side? What are some of the challenges that come with the territory?
Well, as you can probably imagine, it can be pretty physically demanding at times. You're often working in tight spaces, sometimes in extreme temperatures, and you're dealing with heavy machinery.
So you really need to be comfortable getting your hands dirty, both literally and figuratively.
You got it. And it's not just physical stamina you need mental toughness too. The work can be stressful, especially when you're dealing with a major engine failure or you're investigating the aftermath of an accident.
I can only imagine the pressure in those situations. You have to be able to stay calm and think clearly, even when things are chaotic.
Exactly. And because vessels operate around the clock, you might find yourself working some pretty irregular hours, including weekends and holidays.
So it's definitely not your typical 9 to 5 job, but I think for the right person, someone who thrives on variety and a good challenge, the downsides might be worth it.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's not a career for everyone, but for those who are drawn to it, it can be incredibly rewarding.
So let's say someone is listening to us right now and they're hooked. They're thinking, this is it. This is the career for me. Where do they even begin?
Well, a solid foundation in mechanics is really essential.
Hmm.
That could mean a degree in marine engineering, mechanical engineering, or even something like automotive technology.
So having a real passion for understanding how things work is a good starting point.
Precisely. A lot of aspiring vessel engine inspectors, they start out in entry-level positions. They're assisting more experienced inspectors, getting that hands-on experience, and learning the ropes, so to speak.
So it's like an apprenticeship.
That's a good way to think about it.
Hmm.
They might be shadowing senior inspectors, doing basic maintenance checks, documenting procedures, things like that. And then they gradually take on more responsibility as they gain knowledge and experience.
It's about building that foundation of practical skills and getting a real feel for how the industry works.
Exactly. And the RoleCatcher guide we have actually provides some great examples of this type of career progression. For example, they highlight how someone starting out as a marine engine technician might spend that first year really focusing on routine maintenance tasks and assisting with those basic inspections.
So you're not just thrown to the wolves right away.
No, not at all. It's a gradual process of building competence and confidence. As you progress, you might move into a junior inspector role, where you're conducting more independent inspections, maybe even specializing in a particular type of engine or system.
It's kind of like leveling up in a video game, isn't it? You gain new skills, unlock new challenges, and keep progressing.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And as you continue to gain that experience and expertise, you might eventually move into a senior inspector role, where you're overseeing more complex projects, managing a team of inspectors, even consulting on things like engineering design or regulatory compliance.
So there's a clear path for growth and leadership opportunities if you're willing to put in the work. What about certifications? Are there specific qualifications that are essential for moving up the ladder in this field?
Certifications are incredibly important in this line of work. They really demonstrate your expertise and your commitment to professional standards. One that's very highly regarded is the American Boat and Yacht Council Certified Marine Technician Certification.
Wow, that's a mouthful. What exactly does that certification involve?
It's a very thorough program. It covers a wide range of topics related to marine systems, from diesel and gasoline engines to electrical systems, corrosion control, even safety procedures.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about engines then. You need to have a really holistic understanding of how everything on a vessel works together.
Exactly. And the ABYC certification is recognized internationally, which is a huge advantage. It can open doors to job opportunities all over the globe.
That sounds like a valuable asset for anyone who's serious about building a career in this field.
Absolutely. And beyond formal certifications, continuous learning is really key in this industry. The maritime world is constantly evolving. New technologies are emerging all the time. Regulations are changing. Best practices are being updated. You can't just rest on your laurels.
You always have to be learning and growing to stay on top of your game.
You got it. And that might mean attending industry conferences, taking specialized courses, even just networking with other professionals and staying informed. It's all part of the job.
Speaking of networking, you mentioned the RoleCatcher guide earlier. How can someone who's listening leverage resources like that to their advantage?
Well, it sounds like RoleCatcher is a really valuable resource for anyone who's intrigued by this career path. What makes it stand out from the crowd?
For starters, it's not your typical online job board. They've got this massive database, but it's laser focused on vessel engine inspector positions. We're talking listings from all over the place for all different experience levels.
So whether you're just dipping your toes in the water or you're a seasoned professional, there's something there for you.
You got it. But it's not just about finding open positions either. Their AI-powered resume and CV builder, that thing's a game changer. You just upload your information, and it actually analyzes those job descriptions to help you tailor your application, highlighting the skills that hiring managers are looking for.
Oh, wow. So it's like having your own personal marketing expert, making sure you stand out from the competition. Exactly. And then on top of that, they've got these fantastic interview prep resources. Think like a huge library of practice questions that are specific to vessel engine inspection with tips on how to answer them effectively.
That's amazing. I bet that takes some of the stress out of the whole interview process.
Totally. They even have this AI feature that analyzes your practice sessions, like a mock interview, and gives you feedback on your delivery and even the content of your answers.
Wow, they've really thought of everything, haven't they?
They really have. And here's the best part. RoleCatcher is completely free to use. It's an amazing resource for anyone who's even remotely curious about this career path.
Well, you've convinced me. I might have to bookmark that for myself. So as we wrap things up here, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are now seriously considering a deep dive into the world of vessel engine inspection?
You know, if you're the kind of person who's fascinated by complex machinery, loves to solve problems, and isn't afraid of a little hard work, this could be a really fulfilling path. It offers stability, constant opportunities to learn and grow, and you get to work with some seriously cool technology. Plus, how many people can say they inspected a nuclear reactor before lunch?
That's a great point. It's not your average desk job, that's for sure. And it comes with the chance to travel, work with your hands, and play a really important role in keeping things running smoothly in the maritime industry.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of vessel engine inspectors. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring those unconventional career paths. You never know what hidden gems you might uncover.